Hi, everyone. Sean Rhodes here. Welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, we have a mission and a mantra to help salespeople remove hope from how they sell. Whether you are a solo operator, you're out there kicking down doors all by yourself because you are the CEO, CFO, CMO, and chief bottle washer of everything that you do, or maybe you're part of a larger team and you're trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I'm staying at the very edge of my own capabilities, that I'm taking advantage of everything available to me, not only so that I can sell more, but so that I can serve more? If either of those describes you and what you do, you're in the right place. For more than 100 episodes here at Bulletproof Selling, we have been gathering together the brightest minds in sales, from Hall of Fame speakers to best-selling authors to people that are out there every day in the field managing salespeople and driving pipeline themselves. Our goal is to bring these folks on, find out where they are seeing salespeople over-rely on hope, which, believe it or not, it applies to me, it applies to you, it applies to all of us. Because the highest performing teams that I was able to study on actual battlefields around the world, they were fanatical about identifying where hope was entering their plans. And if Navy SEALs and Green Berets can participate in this process of getting better through removing hope, whatever you're selling, whether it's a product, a service, or just your expertise, you can absolutely implement this as well to remove hope, to drive more pipeline so that you can serve more prospects. Now, in every one of these episodes, we, with our guests, build a sales system. So whatever topic we end up landing on, which we never entirely know until we're into the episode. So it's a fun process for me because I never know at the outset what that system's going to look like. But we build a system with our guests so that at the end of this episode, you can take it, you can run with it. It's not just a pump of motivation. I know it's going to be that for you, but it's also going to give you something you can bring into your office, you can bring on your sales calls, and make sure that you're removing hope as well. And in all of the areas that we get to touch across the sales cycle here at Bulletproof Selling, in over 100 episodes, we've gotten to touch a lot of them. One area that crosses across every single one of them, from how we source our prospects to how we drive those conversations, how we provide value during those conversations in the meeting, get our proposals out, get our quotes out, and finally close business. The one area that touches all of them is not just us as salespeople, but it's our prospect. This is an area that gets left out of so many sales conversations, which is to take your prospect into account. When we were on battlefields, something we actually had to focus on was, hey, we know what we're doing, right? We've got our mission plan mapped out. We've got our weapons checks done. We checked all of our gear, made sure all the vehicles were in working order. One thing we had to also make sure we ask was, hey, what about our high value targets? Because believe it or not, they get a vote in the plan too. It's not just what we plan to do as salespeople, it's what our prospects are planning to do. And if we're not keeping them informed every step of the way, if we're not being transparent in how we deal with them, things are going to go sideways because they're going to very quickly get the idea, hey, it's not about me as a prospect. This person, the salesperson, is not trying to serve me. He's trying to serve themselves. And that means that prospect's going to disengage. It's going to be harder to provide value, harder to serve them. So when I found today's guest, we had a great conversation because he came through the referral of another guest that we'd had on the past, a brilliant individual who was able to tell us about the value of actually establishing rapport as a system. So when he said, Sean, you got to talk to this guy, Shane, next. Well, Sean and Shane's pretty similar, but not just similar in mindset, but similar because I think Shane's going to be able to provide a lot of valuable perspective on exactly what it takes to be transparent through the sales process. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show the VP of Sales and Employee Benefits at BKS Partners, Mr. Shane Wingo. Shane, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. I'm telling you, I love the concept of replacing hope with certainty. Too often as salespeople, we're just throwing darts and seeing what sticks instead of being mindful and methodical in how we approach the process. So thanks for letting me join today.
Absolutely, sir. And you mentioned something interesting because even though I have all this training from the military and how not to rely on hope, when I first got myself into sales as a salesperson, you better believe I was throwing darts at the wall and hoping something stuck. It took me a long time to realize, hey, maybe that's not the best way to go. So I want to hear about your background. Talk to me about your sales journey, the folks that you get to coach today, what role you have in doing that, because you're all about a different type of sales process, not relying on hope. Talk to us about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came into this industry back in 2018, I was coming from commodity sales, right? And so here's your price book. Here's how high you can go. This is your bottom. Figure it out and go make it happen. And I was coming into an industry where now I'm going to be sitting with CEOs and CFOs and talking about employee benefit renewals and they've done it for 15 years, and I've been here 15 minutes. So how do I come in and make an impact? How do I differentiate myself? And in my morning study time, I came across this truth, and it said, make it as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. And I thought, if I can come in and be transparent, not only in the solutions that I'm bringing to the table, but if I can also be transparent in the capabilities of our client experience team servicing that, and be transparent in my motive. I'm here to work and do what's best for you. And if I can be clear in all that, then I think I've got a good foundation to build on. The education and the knowledge about our industry will come with time, and of course it did. But at that point, the main thing was letting them know. And the awesome thing is, my son in early 23 started his career in sales. And actually is working with a previous employer of mine, folks that I love. They're great friends. They do great work. And I was so excited. He went and applied for it and got it. And they called me and said, "Do you know a Josh Wingo?" And I said, "Did he run into your building? Has he wrecked the car in the parking lot?" No,
Yeah.
we're going to bring him on. And so we started having conversations, not just as dad and son, but as a mentor aspect, and walking through that concept with him of working with your clients, making that clear and transparent. You're always working with them. And we started from the beginning. As you're studying this industry, have your future prospects, your future clients in mind. How is this going to impact them? How is it going to affect them? How are you going to be the one that can build a better future for them in this area that's important to you and they need, that nobody else can do? So we went from studying to prospecting to being rejected and being accepted, all the way through a partnership, good times, bad times, whenever they decide to leave, because every relationship, is going to leave, is going to end at some point. And how do you reapproach? And the fun thing is, through all those conversations, very unexpectedly, a book came out of that, and I'll be releasing that this year and doing a podcast around it and all that. It's been so exciting. I think some of the best things come when you're not trying to create, right? And doing that with my son and having those conversations, the mentorship with him, and this flows into all of the other folks that I have the opportunity to mentor in this industry and outside of this industry. So it's really fun, and the whole focus of it is transparency. How are we transparent? How are we upfront? How are we clear about every aspect of the process?
And it's something that you didn't mention in that entire bio, the history of your journey through sales was what you actually sell. And I want to give you credit for that, because so many people, whether you're selling employee benefits or whether you're selling widgets, they show up and they say, how can I sell more widgets? And you mentioned not that, but how can I sell a better future? How can I learn what it is you need, what your goals are, and help you get there more efficiently? Employee benefits is one of the bridges that you help people use to get there, but it's not the actual thing that you provide in value, because they can get employee benefits from going to a clearinghouse online. But the value you provide is helping them understand and get to their destination faster. So that's absolutely
100%.
amazing. So I'm curious to then get an idea of the type of coaching that you've ended up doing, because you don't have a sales team that sits under you in a formal way, but yet your company taps you and says, "Shane, we want your insight, we want your information to help everybody else grow." They don't do that with people that don't have some kind of understanding of what's going on. So talk to me a little bit about the coaching that you've ended up doing at BKS.
Yeah, well, we do mentorship here, and I do that inside the company, but I also do it outside. You mentioned us meeting each other because of one of your previous guests. He was coming through high school, and we were playing music together and that sort of thing. Much younger than me, and I've mentored him in the sales aspect of what he does as an entrepreneur as he grows. So I continue to do that outside of the industry as well. But what I lean on as I teach and as I mentor is storytelling. I think storytelling, when it's not, fictional, and it's based on accurate, situations that you've come through, I think that's the best way for folks to learn. And whether it's in a mentoring aspect with those that are underneath me, or whether it's talking to prospective clients and trying to clarify how we're going to work together and move from where you are today to where you need to be. Having that story of how you've done that positively with a previous client, it breaks the ice. It adds validity to it. It adds to the credibility of what you're talking about. So I lean heavily on storytelling in the mentoring process and working with other sales folks.
That's great. So the thing that I'm curious to get your insight on, we touched on the word a few times, but I want to know how it actually manifests in the sales process for you, or it doesn't in a lot of the folks that you end up mentoring and coaching, is this idea of transparency. So I want to know where hope factors into this, because I know as a brand new salesperson, I was just
Sure.
hoping the person on the other end of the line could build the bridge themselves between where they were and how what I was selling would help them get to where they wanted to be. And until I learned how to be more transparent about that and know what the transparency actually looked like, it just wasn't
Mhm.
happening for me. I kept relying on hope. So, where do you see salespeople relying on hope when it comes to transparency and how they're dealing with that prospect?
Yeah, absolutely. And now I'll make those above me a bit happier, and I'll talk about employee benefits a little bit as an
Okay.
example, right? So in what we do in employee benefits, there's multiple ways it can be structured. One of the most common is fully insured, and it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. Everything happens behind a curtain. You get no details. There is zero transparency that happens. And 60, 90 days out, they say, here's your renewal, and you just kind of got to take it. So
Yeah.
what we do is we work with employee benefits to add a transparency factor. We come in and we disassemble what's there, we unbundle it, and we look at every piece of it, and then kind of rebuild that or construct it in a unique way that's best for that group of employees. And it's important as we walk in the door to be transparent about where they are today and how are we going to build that path. So I have multiple younger sales representatives for our organization that will come out with me in shadow, or I'll go out with them, and then we'll have discussions afterwards. And it always starts with, where are you today? Listening. That's a key aspect to all of this. Is you can't come in if you're selling at a higher level and you're selling a relationship as opposed to a commodity. You got to be an active listener, because that's where all of your keys are. That's where the tells are on how we need to drive it forward. So by listening and hearing where they are having stumbling blocks, where they are having issues, that's when that storytelling comes into play. That's when you rely on, even if it's not your own story, steal from people that you know, if it's a successful story, and tell their story and let them know, here's the situation you are today. Here's where you need to be. Here's the steps of the process that are going to get us from point A to point B. Now, another big aspect of that is you're sitting at that conference room table and you're making all these promises and saying, here's what we're going to do, and here's a better tomorrow. And then you go back into the office, and your client experience team or your service team, whatever you term them, they're the ones tasked with making all of this happen. I mean, you're still part of the process. You're the lead of that team, your quarterback, if you will. But the day-to-day is going to happen with that client experience team. So taking transparency to the client experience team and saying, here's where they are today. We know here's where they want to be, and here are the steps that I've outlined they're going to get us there. Now, I'm here as a part of this team and doing it, but on a day-to-day, here's A, here's B, let's talk and work this out together. So being transparent with your team about the process you've outlined with this now client, so you're all on the same page, and the client sees through what you've said initially through implementation. It's all seamless, and you were transparent from the beginning on through. And again, you're building a
So yeah.
relationship. So in my industry, every year you're reselling. And so what you've done in the past year is your key to moving forward in year 2 and 3 and 4. And so if you've held things back and oh, this was an issue, but we're really not going to dive into that because that's a hard conversation. You have to have those hard conversations. You have to be transparent with the good. And then when there are roadblocks and there are speed bumps, you've got to be transparent in that and be the leader that's taking your client experience team and your client and moving them forward as a collective team.
And you've talked about being transparent, not just with your prospect, but with your own team internally. Because if they don't
Absolutely.
have a clear understanding of what you've promised to this potential customer, they're going to be delivering on what they think they are supposed to be delivering, but that might not be in alignment with what your customers expecting. So it's a brilliant idea to be transparent both internally and externally. But now, because I know I want to build a system around this, this is too good not to. There are so many things I could be transparent about.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the prospect doesn't need to know the fact that it takes three, paper clips to put that package together. Like maybe that's a little too
Right.
transparent. So it's understanding, what does this prospect need to know to help serve them
Mm-hmm.
now, so that whether they become clients or not, they'll have a higher standard they're going to hold everybody else up against, because they'll say, well, you're
Absolutely.
not doing what Shane was doing. So let's build a system around this. And I really want to focus on how do we determine what should we be sharing in part of this transparent process.
Mm-hmm.
Across the military, Shane, every time we built a new system or implemented a new one, it removed hope from what we were dealing with on the battlefield. So here at Bulletproof Selling, we do the same thing. We trim hope away with every new system. So we use this acronym TRIM to make sure we're tracking every
Mm-hmm.
good element of a right system. So the T in TRIM is the trigger. Now, if I want to begin being more transparent with my prospects and with my team internally so that everybody's on the same page about what's going on, where do I trigger this? Does it happen when I get a new prospect in the pipeline? Does it happen when that deal closes?
Right.
Does it happen even before I'm selling anything? Do I need to arrange this ahead of time? Where do I trigger a system that makes sure we're transparent both internally and externally?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important what you said. There's layers of transparency,
Mm,
and there's times when the deeper transparency is required, and sometimes it's not. Right. So I think you have a trigger for being transparent about your motives initially. When you're first making that call with a prospective client, your motives need to be clear. Now, you don't need to get into all the ins and outs and inner workings of whatever your solution is, employee benefits or whatever else, but they need to understand that your motive is to do what's best for them and their employees. You're on their side working with them. So that's step one. But as you get deeper into the process, as you get closer to that yes, and now they're actually a client, now at that point you've built a roadmap. Here's today and here's the future, and that is going to be an 18-month process, a 3-year process, a 2-month, whatever it is. And you need to transparently put together that roadmap, an accountability calendar, a stewardship calendar, whatever you want to term it. Put that together, stick by it. Now, when you've done that, it has my responsibilities, has my client experience team's responsibilities, has the client's responsibilities. Everybody knows what their role is to accomplish the end. So when you do hit that road bump, if it happens to be that your client didn't meet a deadline you needed to, so you could be as productive as you wanted to be for them, you can very diplomatically have that conversation and, not have all of the fault or blame fall back on your client experience team, your solution, your product. So I think it's layers of transparency, and it grows as your relationship grows. But I think your transparency with your client experience team, it always has a depth to it. In talking with my son when he came into this career of advising, consulting, selling, I know the company he's with, so I know their service team, and I know that they're top notch. But for anyone that I'm, mentoring or talking to, if they're asking me for advice, should I take this job in sales? Go to that organization, look at their sales team, or look at their service team, and understand their capabilities, because you can only go as far in sales as your service team is willing and able to support the promises that you've made. So transparency extends to when you're searching for that next position. You want that future probable employer to be transparent about their service team, so you can understand their capabilities. Are they going to be able to, and do they want to live up to all that you're about to promise to your future clients?
That's a great point. So we've got to start this off then by understanding our motives, making sure we have that mapped out as far as the sales process and the delivery process. I love having
Mm-hmm.
that mapped out ahead of time, so that as I'm speaking with this prospect, I don't have to try to hope that I remember any element of it. No, it's right there in front of me. Here's
Right.
the ideal flow. It may not always look like that because things might get held up on your end, the world may change on our end, but at least this is the ideal flow that I can talk about. So if we've got the trigger in place, then the R in trim is making this thing repeatable. So I want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I'm repeating how I'm transparent with every single prospect. So it's not I get off a call and I hope I was transparent with that person. I looked at
Right.
my roadmap, but did I do it or not? I don't know. So how do I make sure that
Yeah.
I'm repeating this transparent process? Are there things I want to make sure I mention on the call or between me and my delivery team? What are those 5 or 6 big elements that you would include on a checklist to make sure that we are transparent throughout the sales and delivery process?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is having a process, right? Too many
Yeah.
folks don't have a process. I'm going to dial for dollars, or I'm going to hit the street, or I'm going to send out 100 emails. So what's step two? And what's step three? And what's step eight? So the first step is actually having a process. That's first and foremost. And that begins to remove hope. And it also starts to shorten sales cycles, because now you're remembering each step of the process. You're actually doing each step of the process. I think step two is actively using your CRM, having a CRM, customer relationship management tool, entering your clients in there. And if you have a process, and if it's a 8-step process over 30 days, high touch points, different communications, it's an email, and then it's a LinkedIn contact, and then it's a drop by with some collateral, then it's a follow-up, whatever that happens to be, high contact, short period of time, maybe 30 days is what I would suggest. But you've got that process. Now put that client in the CRM, have that reminder for step two. As soon as step two is done, have step three, have step four, walk through that process. And every touch point at that stage of the game, you're closing for a conversation. You don't want, you get them on the phone, they sound interested. You don't want to continue that conversation and give them more ammunition to decide not to sit down with you. So close for the sit down, get in front of them, have a Zoom, whatever it happens to be based on your geography, but schedule that longer, deeper conversation, give them additional insight to be ready for it on the front end, and then go from there. But I think you have to have a process. You can't just have it, you have to live by it. And it needs to be in a CRM where it's repeatable. My dad was in sales, and that's how I got into sales. He had an index card system back in the day,
Yeah.
and he rotated index cards in a little box, and that's how he knew where to hit it. We have it so much easier, and we make so many more excuses, even though we have the technology to just get out and make it happen. So have a process, stick by it.
I love the idea of having a preset campaign so I don't have to remember what the next step is. It automatically fires. I know I can just do this task today, and then next week or next 2 weeks, that next task will come up in front of me for that prospect. I don't have to remember it. But I'm curious to get your idea on making sure that transparency is there throughout the conversations. Do you have a set thing that you're discussing with your prospects, given where they are in the sales cycle, so that in the early stages, I need to be transparent about this set of things, and then deeper in the process, I need to be transparent about this set of things and talk to them about transparency in the delivery? How does that look for you throughout the sales cycle?
Yeah, and I think it can be different with each industry, right? Because each industry can be so specific. And I deal in sales cycles sometimes that are 3 years, approaching that client and working. Sometimes some people deal in very short sales cycles. But I think in each step of that process, as you're building it out, that level of transparency. Okay, I'm having an introduction. My level of transparency needs to be about my motives and why I want to help them. Why am I the person that's qualified to come in the door and start building a better tomorrow? And then once you've gotten that, you've had an initial meeting, you've talked about your process, that sort of thing. Now you're getting deeper, because you're past the introductions. You're talking about your solution and product. For me personally, in employee benefits, I'm talking about unbundling. I'm talking about separating your pharmacy and having it separate from your medical claims, so you can attack both separately, because they need to be attacked separately. They're two different cost measures, and the cost containment tools around those two pieces inside the same product are very different. So if they're just bundled together, how do you break it down and approach it? So give that transparency. For me, it's separation, unbundling, attacking everything head on. Now, when you get the yes, and you're ready to introduce the client experience team with us here at BKS Partners, there's multiple levels of the client experience team, but that doesn't include our technology partners that build out enrollment systems, our compliance division that makes sure everyone has all of their IRS forms completed and turned in. There's all these, our wellness team that builds wellness initiatives, population health. So there's all these other players. So being transparent about everything they're about to receive now that they're a client, and who's going to be contacting. Some of the worst things with a new client can be, I've never heard of Melissa, so why is she emailing me, and I've never met her and I don't know who she is. So the introductions of the team, the process that's to come, and that stewardship calendar sets transparency for a 12-month period. Here's how we're going to partner together for the next 12 months. Who has every role and responsibility, including your own, And now you've built that out. So I think the transparency kind of deepens as you go from prospect introduction to, okay, we're at the meeting, you're making a decision, now you're my client. And it just continues to deepen as you move through those levels of partnership.
And so many salespeople talk about, this is more of a marketing tactic, but I hear a lot of companies use it. Welcome to our family, right? When a client is onboarded, it's, welcome to the BKS family. Well, I think about how that actually works inside of a family conversation. I would never tell you, Shane, expect to hear from my second cousin. And that's all the information you have. You're like, all right, I don't know who that is. But no, you're going to hear from my second cousin, Bob Smith. And Bob is going to call you, and he's got a crazy accent. And here's how, Bob's a great dude. You're going to love him. So you would get more context to it. And then when that call happens, you're like, all right, now I am part of the family. So it's so important that if we're going to have great client handoff, which is, a whole nother topic to dive into at another day.
Absolutely.
What that looks like, to know that that prospect knows what to expect and who to expect it from. So if I've gone through those great steps, which could last the entire sales process and into delivery, because the delivery people should be doing the same thing the salespeople are doing.
100%.
What should the client expect next? Who should they expect it from? All the way to renewal, to all the great things that can happen after and referrals. Now I want to make sure I'm on the iron trim, which is to improve this, because we can always get better. So what are the ways that you would recommend we improve how transparent we are with our prospects and our clients? Should we be talking to our clients after we onboard them to figure out what could have been done better? What, where are the places we dropped the ball? What are some ideas you have for how to be more transparent?
Yeah, I think, to improve in transparency, it's always through review and discussion, right? In that stewardship calendar, there should be entry points that are simply, we're not here to deliver information. We're here to ask you. What is missing? What have we lacked in? Where have we excelled? Now we need to be ready for those conversations. We need to have our data pulled. We need to know what we've accomplished. We need to be ready to roll with that. But it's all about open lines of communication. And so I think the way that we monitor that transparency, the way that we improve on transparency is by having those conversations with clients at every stage of the process. And when we get that constructive feedback, not having the hair on the back of our neck stand up and getting defensive, but understanding, okay, this is an opportunity for me to learn, because we all should be ready to learn no matter what our stage in life is. It's an opportunity for me to learn. And if I can do this better for this client, maybe that's going to help me do my job better for every client, and my retention rates are going to go up. I'm going to have more information to give on the front end whenever I'm capturing a client or creating that partnership, because I'm going to be able to discuss this. I had a client that talked to me about XYZ. Here's how we made that improvement as a team, and we listen and we do things to improve for our clients. So I think it's through open dialogue. I think that's how you improve on transparency.
So I've done those things then, and now I'm on to the M in trim, which is to measure this system. Is if I'm taking the time to map this stuff out in a way that it might not have never been mapped out at my company before, I'm spending more time talking with my delivery team, and I might have ignored those folks entirely. I've been too busy focused on sales tasks. Now I've got to justify all of this. So what am I going to measure to make sure that implementing a transparency system through my sales and delivery process is better than what I was doing before? Am I just measuring closed deals? Am I measuring renewal and referral rates? What are the things that you recommend I begin measuring, the hard objectives here?
Yeah, for our industry, it's renewal, right? I mean, that's something that is key for us. One of the things that attracted me to employee benefits on the front end, I was working in commodities, and I was creating relationships, but I was having commission checks once every 3 or 5 years, because that was the length of our contract. And if I'm relational, that's difficult. It's difficult because you have to be churn and burn in some of those types of industries. So instead, in this industry, you're able to be relational. So I think to measure it, you look at retention. In my industry, you look at retention. If your retention rates are higher than they were before you started this process, or higher than they are with other representatives that are inside your firm that are not utilizing this transparency model, then I think you measure it by retention. I think internally you have audits of yourself with your internal team. Don't do it directly. Have your superiors do it. Make it anonymous. Get the information you need so you can grow to be a better leader. Transparency is great, and it feeds into leadership. You know, if you're not transparent with them, they don't have trust in you. They're not going to follow you into battle, if it were, right? So I think those are the things that you can measure. Retention, of course, new sales, but retention rates and the satisfaction of your team working with you and wanting to continue to work with you.
And I love what you said about measuring how relational you are through the sales process, which does not end as soon as the contract is delivered. Like you mentioned, it's every
Absolutely.
3 years. Well, if you haven't had any contact with that client between the point of sale and the 3-year renewal mark, you really can't blame them for going somewhere else if someone's developed a better relationship. So to
Yeah.
measure how relational you are, how many touch points you have, how much value you're adding to that person's life, even after they've cut you a check. So amazing system end to end on how to be more transparent, both internally with our team and prospect facing. So Shane, if people are interested in finding out more about you, about BKS Partners, because I know that you're not the only one that preaches transparency there, how do
Yeah.
we get deeper into your world?
Yeah, just the easiest way is to just search me on LinkedIn, Shane Wingo, Wingo. I'm the goofy smiling guy with a proactive sign in front of him. So just find me there. All my contact information is right there on LinkedIn, or go to bkspartners.com. I just want to say thanks for having me. I listen every week. I gain so much insight from the guests that you have on. So I hope for your listeners, I haven't let them down being on the podcast this week and sharing some of my thoughts in comparison to what they normally hear. So.
Well, I can tell you they don't have to hope that you provided value. I know that you have. So thanks so much for coming on here. And of course, for everybody catching us on the live stream, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. Every single one of these conversations is archived there if you're interested. And of course, if you're listening, check us out, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere the podcast can be found. And if you are listening, go ahead and leave us a review. We need to let other salespeople know hope no longer has to be part of their sales strategy. So Shane, thanks for giving up some of your time today to give back to the sales community. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thanks, Sean.